Mercedes have been trying to hide this from us, so we're going to be going through that and 3 other stories in today's video. So make sure to like this video, and if you want more Mercedes news content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting that red button down below. The first story is Mercedes reveals the latest milestone development. Mercedes will unveil its final major upgrade of the season at this weekend's United States Grand Prix as it starts to build for its assault on next year's F1 titles. After recognizing very early on in the campaign it had to take a different direction with its car, Mercedes has steadily attempted to build on that development route. The team remains without a victory this year and has just 5 Grands Prix remaining to rectify that situation and avoid its first winless season since 2011. For Austin's Circuit of the Americas, the W14s of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell will sport a modified floor. Team principal Toto Wolff said, "It is the last significant update we will take to the track this year, and it will hopefully bring a small gain, but more importantly is another milestone in setting our development path for W15. Initially, it will play a small part in Mercedes's bid to at least claim second place in the Constructors Championship, a battle, Wolff claims, has become more intense in recent races. That is on the back of McLaren's resurgence as the team has thrust itself towards the front of the grid. At present, it is not expected McLaren will threaten either Mercedes and Ferrari, who are just 26 points apart, with the latter 81 points of the team from Woking, although Oscar Piastri has stated he is not giving up the fight to catch the Scuderia. Wolff insists Mercedes will keep pushing to secure a semblance of respectability from a season in which Red Bull has been crushingly dominant to such an extent that newly crowned triple champion Max Verstappen could have won the Constructors' Championship on his own. Wolff needs both Hamilton and Russell singing from the hymn sheet for the team to achieve its aims, which was not the case at the last race in Qatar when the duo collided at the first corner, sending the 7-time champion out of the race. As the senior team member, Hamilton took responsibility for the incident, after which he and Russell made clear there was no ill feeling between the duo. Wolff is confident lessons have been learned, adding, "The last round in Qatar was a case of what might have been. As a team, you never want to see your cars collide. It was frustrating to leave a lot of points on the table, particularly as the pace of the car was strong. It was encouraging, though, to see how the drivers and the team reacted. Both Lewis and George know the team comes first and do not ever intend to jeopardize that. I am sure we will all grow from this moment. We're now focused on Austin and making sure we get the most out of each upcoming weekend." Mercedes' Andrew Shovlin has detailed key performance factors teams must evaluate when opting for different design paths. The Silver Arrows dropped its flawed zero side pod concept at the Monaco Grand Prix in favor of a more conventional design, but this was something of a stopgap for the W14, with broader changes set for the 2024 W15 machine. The trend of concepts have gravitated towards the Red Bull style of downwash side pods, as opposed to the bathtub ones pioneered by Ferrari and the zero side pods Mercedes stuck with despite a poor 2022. Shovlin detailed a key link between the side pods and the floor as Mercedes continues to try and reel Red Bull in and regain its championship titles. "We view it as a bit more complicated than just what do the side pods look like," Trackside Engineering Director Shovlin told media, including Racing News 365. "What the side pods look like interacts very heavily with what's going on with the floor, and the floor is the thing that's generating most of the downforce. So you use the word like we're going down a different path or exploring a different concept, but generally that, for the teams, will mean that there are changes right underneath the car, and it's about putting the bits together above that are going to be conditioning the airflow. That is one element, but then the other thing, with a new set of regulations, is working out where you want to target the downforce. Where are you wanting to chase in terms of efficiency or drag levels? And a lot of the work we do when we're talking about going off on a different development route is actually saying, where do we think the real value is? When your resources are so limited by the cost cap, you need to be very careful about where you're searching for performance, because it's got to be fruitful. Because you've got so little wind tunnel time, the cost cap is making things difficult. You don't want to be exploring for potential upgrades in barren lands that won't yield performance, basically. The second story is Wolff admits frustrations following Hamilton and Russell Qatar crash, but backs the pair to grow ahead of Austin. Toto Wolff admitted it was frustrating not to score more points in Qatar. after Lewis Hamilton and George Russell collided on the opening lap of the race. However, the Mercedes team principal backed the pair to move on from the incident as they look to get back on track in Austin this weekend. Russell and Hamilton came together at Turn 1 at the start of the Grand Prix, with the latter looking to make his way round the outside of the former. While Hamilton's race ended there and then in the gravel, Russell recovered to P4 after initially dropping to the back of the field. But Wolff was keen to leave the incident in the past, despite the obvious frustrations, turning his attentions to maximising this weekend's circuit of the Americas Action, which kicks off the triple-header that follows up with Mexico and concludes in Brazil. We have a busy couple of weeks coming up as the season reaches its conclusion, starting with a triple-header in the USA, Mexico, and Brazil, said Wolff, previewing the weekend on Mercedes' website. The last round in Qatar was a case of what might have been. As a team, you never want to see your cars collide. It was frustrating to leave a lot of points on the table, particularly as the pace of the car was strong. It was encouraging, though, to see how the drivers and the team reacted. Both Lewis and George know the team comes first and do not ever intend to jeopardize that. I am sure we will all grow from this moment. We're now focused on Austin and making sure we get the most out of each upcoming weekend. Wolff also gave an update on the upgraded floor Mercedes are set to introduce this weekend, as they look to gain some breathing space in the battle for second in the Constructors Championship with Ferrari. It's always great to race at the Circuit of the Americas. There's a fantastic atmosphere and the city welcomes F1 with open arms, said Wolff. COTA is one of the most challenging modern tracks and a real thrill for the drivers. We'll be bringing a modified floor, which is the last significant update we will take to the track this year. It will hopefully bring a small gain, but more importantly is another milestone in setting our development path for W15. The battle for second in the Constructors has become more intense in recent races. We will keep our heads down, keep pushing, and aim to score as many points as we can to increase our advantage. Second-place Mercedes currently lead Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship by 28 points with 5 races and 2 sprints left this year. George Russell and Lewis Hamilton are unconcerned about a key trend that has been spotted with Mercedes throughout the 2023 season. The team has turned around its fortunes since the start of the season, having slipped behind both Ferrari and Aston Martin in the competitive running order in the first handful of rounds. Switching car concepts in Monaco to ditch the zero side pod design enabled it to challenge more consistently for podiums and leapfrog Ferrari in the Constructors' Championship, who it leads by 28 points heading into the final 5 races of the season. Although most weekends it looks like Mercedes will endure a tough race weekend, this often changes overnight between practice, qualifying, and the race. Both drivers can often fail to deliver on the promise shown on Friday, with Hamilton suffering 2 Q2 exits and Russell failing to make Q3 on 4 occasions this year. The third story is George Russell warned, "You can't just be the nice guy" by F1 teammate who toppled Lewis Hamilton. Nico Rosberg says George Russell can't afford to just be the nice guy in his rivalry with Mercedes F1 teammate Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton and Russell dramatically came to blows at Turn 1 on the first lap of the Qatar Grand Prix last time out, an incident which left Hamilton stuck in the gravel and Russell at the back of the field. The Mercedes duo had come close to contact on multiple occasions at the previous race in Japan prior to their brutal intra-team collision in Qatar. Rosberg, who pipped Hamilton to the 2016 title at the end of a fierce rivalry littered by several on-track flashpoints, believes Russell needs to keep the pressure on the 7-time world champion. Things have been heating up there, because also in Suzuka it was like well over the limit on one occasion when they both took each other off the track, Rosberg said on the Sky Sports F1 podcast. So it's interesting to follow. I hope that Toto is managing that carefully because you've got to be ahead of the curve there and not let that spiral. It's a very difficult situation for George as well because unfortunately you can't just be the nice guy in that situation. You have to also internally keep the pressure on. You have to make it difficult for the team. Unfortunately it sucks, but otherwise the team is just going to take the easiest route. So it's very uncomfortable because George needs to be pushing, which he does on the radio. You hear him saying again and things like that. He's really trying to hold against it. Rosberg thinks Hamilton's admission that he was at fault for their Qatar clash was a big win for Russell. It was a good one now in Qatar for George because Lewis actually admitted, so that was a big win for George in that sense. Also internally, he added, which is very rare because in my time, Lewis never had 100% at fault, so he never actually had to admit in that way. It is very, very rare for Lewis to be 100% at fault like that. It usually never happens. To be watched. It's an interesting battle and dynamic that's opening up there. Toto Wolff skipped his second race in a row as he continued rehabilitation from knee surgery, and Rosberg said the Mercedes boss's absence in Qatar was not ideal. Toto is the only person there that can manage that, Rosberg explained. He's the only person that has the authority and respect to handle that. He's the right guy also to handle it. No one else can force them to sit down and have a discussion and hit the table. I think it will be very good for Toto to be back at the racetrack.